Okay, and in the World Cup qualifier playoff this evening between Australia and Peru, it's gone to penalties. Australia have edged it 5-4 on penalties. Redmayne, the substitute goalkeeper who was brought on for the penalty shootout, ends up being the hero with the penalty save right at the death. No goals scored in the game. It was a bit of a cagey game, which is understandable, as it's a straight knockout, winner takes all, goes to the World Cup. But the pace of the game started off quite quick. It was quite a quick start. Both sides were looking very energetic in the first half. And Australia, I think, edged the 90 minutes. I think Peru edged the extra time. But what was very noticeable is this game was played in Qatar as the neutral venue. What was also noticeable was how the heat really did affect the pace of the game and the quality of the game as things drew on. Now, Australia and Peru are not top international sides. They're good international sides. They've got some good players. They're not your Brazils or Argentinas or Germanys or Spain or of the world. They're that second level of decent international level. But it was very noticeable the impact of the weather conditions, the heat. Now, in November and December, it will be slightly cooler than what it was this evening. Now, they kicked off local time at 9 p.m. They were using an air-conditioned stadium. You can see why a lot of fans are sceptical about how the quality of the football we are going to see at this tournament in 5 months' time. There's a lot of scepticism about the quality of the football we are going to see. Now, Australia and Peru gave 110% in very hot conditions. It was still in the mid-20s by the time of the penalty shootout. When they kicked off, it was in the mid-30s. So, even though it was mid-evening when they kicked off, the heat had a massive impact on the pace of the game. As the game went on, the pace just dropped off a cliff. There were spurts of energy, there were bursts of energy and bursts of excitement. A lot of chances were created by both sides, very few on target. And I think this could be a litmus test for what the tournament is actually like in November and December. And if this is, let's say, a knockout game, what the knockout games could be like, if the heat is as bad as it could be, depending on kick-off time, we could see a lot of knockout games like this, where it's energy conservation, slightly slower pace of game, which is not necessarily what we want. There was a lot of mistakes in the game by both sides, so the game was reasonably open, but as the game wore on, you could definitely see the impacts of that heat draining. Players were cramping up in the 90 minutes. Extra time, players were dropping all over the place with cramp on both sides. And of course, it goes to the penalty shootout. Now, what I didn't like about the Australian choice was to take Matty Ryan, their starting goalkeeper, off and put Redmayne, the number 2 goalkeeper, on just for the penalty shootout. I'm not a fan of that. I've never been a fan of that. I don't like that decision. I know it's a tactical decision. I understand why coaches do it. But I'm not a fan of it. People will have their views on that. Now, Redmayne has proven to be the hero. His antics on the line, the dancing around doing the Bruce Grobbler Yurtsy Dudek distraction has worked. Peru missed 2 penalties, but Australia missed a penalty themselves, although they do win 5-4 on penalties. Midway through the second half, you could sort of tell with the missed chances that both sides were having throughout the game that this could be a penalty shootout type game, unless something happens later on in the second half with exhaustion, fatigue, sloppy errors. But as I say, as a litmus test for what the World Cup was going to be like, the pitch, the playing surface was brilliant. The stadium itself was actually fantastic, and for a neutral venue for a qualifying game, the crowd was pretty decent. It was about half full stadium. So there's been concerns about crowd numbers. Actually, no, both Australia and Peru took a lot of fans to this game. So I think crowd numbers could be slightly better than what we expect in Qatar in the World Cup. But unfortunately, the quality on the pitch, you could tell it was a nervy qualification playoff. You could tell it was a nervy winner-takes-all game. And you could tell that, the nerves were there. There was a little bit of conservativeness about the play at times. And I think that the weather conditions didn't help. If that was a neutral venue in Europe or a neutral venue in South America or the US or Canada, somewhere like that, where the weather conditions might be less oppressive, the game might have been at a higher pace and maybe higher quality. I think Australia were slightly the better side. I think they created the better chances. They had better passing movement, better teamwork. I think there were too many individual performances by Peru and not enough combination play to get up to the final third of the field. But I think overall Australia getting through is a fair result with how the play played out, especially in the first 90 minutes. Australia were the better side. I could say Peru slightly edged it in extra time. I think they raised their game a little bit in the extra time. The timing of the substitutions was important. I was surprised how late on in the original 90 minutes the substitutions were being made in the heat. That surprised me a little bit. I would have thought both coaches would try to freshen up their lineups with injecting fresh legs a little bit earlier in the play. And that's going to be something else that I think will be crucial in the World Cup is the timing of substitutions when fresh legs are brought on. When do coaches freshen up? With injections of fresh legs and tactical changes, because there were some Australia did make a tactical change midway through the second half. It had some kind of impact because they were looking a little bit, okay, this tactical change did sort of work. You move a winger to the centre forward, you put another winger on, you tweak it a little bit, you take off a wing back and put an attacking, more attacking wing back on. So the tactical changes Australia made were positive. Peru is more like for like changes. They do hit a post, but Australia have more shots on target. And when it came to the penalty shootout, they held their nerve. So there you go. Australia are through via penalties. As I say, litmus test for what the World Cup is going to be like. We've got New Zealand, Costa Rica tomorrow evening, and again, temperatures are going to be pretty similar. I would think Costa Rica are heavy favourites for that game against New Zealand. So we may see goals in the 90 minutes. Hopefully it doesn't go to a penalty shootout. But Australia thoroughly deserve to get to their 5th World Cup in a row. Peru, yeah, they're not the side they were in the 70s, if you're old enough to remember that. And, they've only been to one World Cup since 1982. Australia are now becoming regular World Cup, regulars, so to speak. But they do it the hard way more often than not. They've only qualified twice by right in their entire qualification history. Every other time they've gone through a playoff format to get to the World Cup. And they've done it by penalty shootout several times as well. So they don't do it easy. I don't think Australia are going to get out of their group, if I'm being honest. They've got Denmark and France in there. I can see that being a very, very tough group for them. But what is also interesting, every time they've qualified for the World Cup, the eventual winners have beaten Australia at some point, either in the group stage or the first knockout stage, and then have gone on to win the tournament. So there you go. West Germany in '74, famously. France 4 years ago. There's another one that springs to mind. Italy in 2006 in the second round. Every time Australia have qualified for the World Cup, the eventual winners have had to beat them or play them on the way to winning that World Cup. And they're the ones that stick out in my memory as quite famous games. But there you go. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll have some more videos for you very, very soon.